Hi, welcome to BAL, Building Athletic Lifestyles. I'm Neil. Last time we spoke about pelvic tilts, and particularly something called the lower cross syndrome was in there as well. If you missed that video, there is a link in the top right hand corner, you can go check that out. This week we're going to bring it up to the shoulders and instead look at something called the upper cross syndrome. So before we even get started, we just want to make sure we're all on the same page. So we're looking at rounded shoulders or nerd neck, things like this. It gets called a number of things. Essentially we're looking at this posture position where the shoulders start to round forwards, the head comes forwards as well, and the sternum starts to dip. So we're just going to dive a little bit into what it is, how we identify if we have it and how much we have it, and then what we can do about addressing that as well. First port of call is understanding exactly what's happening when we get this upper cross syndrome. The reason it's called upper cross syndrome is if you were to turn the profile side on, what you would find is that you'd have a line diagonally cutting through the body that's of tight muscles, and then you'd have a line going opposing motion the other way that is of weaker or lengthened muscles. So there's two muscles primarily that contribute to the pull down and in of the shoulder, coming in and forwards here. So first one, like I was just gesturing there, is pec minor. That attaches from just in under the shoulder here, runs all the way down, attaches into the ribs as well. What that does is that pulls down if it gets tight. Very common if you spend a lot of time with the arms extended out in front of the body, or if you do a lot of pushing motion, pressure motions in the gym as well. As well as that, we have a muscle called subscapularis, so scapula being your shoulder blade. That muscle sits underneath on the inside edge of it. It's one of your rotator cuff muscles. It's responsible for rotating the arm inwards. Again, if we think about rotating the arm inwards, that's going to be bringing that shoulder forwards and in towards the midline of the body, coming in through this way. Yeah. So those two tend to get quite tight. Couple that with then round on the back of the body. Instead, you get some weakness through the muscles like the mid and lower traps, the rhomboids, the ones that are responsible for pulling the shoulder blades down and back, also for creating some thoracic extension as well. These are the muscles around the shoulder blade itself that don't quite function as efficiently as we would like. Couple that as well is what we get typically with this collapsing forwards of the shoulders. We then also get this dip of the sternum. The result of that is that the head also tips forward. So to prevent you from looking at your toes the whole time, the body naturally compensates by then lifting the chin up. The result of that as well is that we then get some tight muscles around on the back of the neck. Also couple that with then at the front, because we've got the chin elevated, your deep set cervical flexors that run in through here that pull the chin down and back, those as well can get a little bit weak. So we just end up with these strength discrepancies between the two, which all tend to lead towards this posture that's, one, it's not very pretty, but also it's not very functional at the same time. So now we've got a bit of an understanding of what it actually is, diving into why does it matter, why do we even care? So the position itself, being in this rounded shoulder position with the head extended, also this off center position through the entire top of the body, what that leads to is some dysfunctional movement and also can lead to some impingements as well. So the rounded shoulders, if you're then doing a lot of elevation, so if you're lifting stuff, you're reducing the amount of space available in the shoulder, you're likely to increase your risk of impingement through that. Also as well in terms of the spine itself, because we then get this forward flexion, we call it, the spine bends forwards. If we're then loading that as well, we're getting a lot of uneven pressure through the discs. If you think of it as the two vertebrae themselves above the disc, it should be ideally fairly straight so that any compressive forces actually line up quite evenly. If we've got this big bend forwards, then what happens is now they don't have the even pressure, so when we press down, the disc's more likely to go popping out the back. Extreme cases certainly, but risk of injury goes up, particularly the more we spend in this position, the more forces we apply in those directions, the more likely we are to then pick up one of those injuries. So it's more about preventing injuries further down the line. You may be able to get away with being in that position for 30 years before something finally goes ping. Couple that as well with actually that position itself, that collapsed forward shoulders, the head dipping forwards, it just doesn't look pretty, right? That's about all there is to say on that one. That pretty much sums it up. So now we've got an idea of what it is, why we care. We're then going to identify if there's actually anything to be worried about for you yourself. The fact that you're on this video probably insinuates that you've got a rough idea. So there's a couple of easy ways to assess this. The first one is a little assessment that's real natural to do, that you can pick yourself up on every now and then as well if you just start to be more and more aware of it. So all you need to do is stand up, let your arms hang by the sides, and then look at the direction the thumbs were pointing if you straighten them. If those thumbs are pointing across the body, that's an indicator that that arm is internally rotated as it's collapsed forwards. Yeah, so we get this rounded position because then the thumb points off to the side. If it's pointing dead out in front of you, or at least somewhere forwards, then actually we're not in a position where we've got a lot of internal rotation at the shoulder, and it may be that if you're still getting discomfort from it, one, obviously go and see a professional, but it may in fact be that it's more of a solely a thoracic extension issue and less about the shoulders themselves. Another really easy way to check is to look in the mirror. Yeah, if you need to, set your phone up side on, turn yourself side on and see what it looks like, right? Pretty simple way of checking. Doesn't need much explanation on that one. So an easy one to check that you can become more aware of as well is the position of your sternum. So you've got the top of the sternum here, the little bone that sits at the top of the chest here. So as your two collarbones come in, it's that one in the middle. You can feel it if you tap away on it. Now you want to imagine it like a glass of water. We want to keep that glass of water nice and flat. If we start to collapse forward with these rounded shoulders, the sternum starts to dip. We end up pouring water out the front of that glass of water, collapsing forwards from here. So we want to make sure that we're keeping that sternum nice and tall, nice and flat. As well, you can also go the other way and go too far and end up leaning back where you're putting more water out the back. Less common, but it is still possible. So think about keeping that sternum, keeping the glass of water nice and level. So now we have an idea of what it is, why we care about it, if you even have it, and to what degree you may have it. Now it's about understanding what we can do to address it and get ourselves in a better position. So there's three main steps to this. We want to lengthen any tight muscles that are limiting motion. We want to strengthen any weak muscles that are not standing up to the stress as they should be. And then we also want to check our daily habits as well and try and learn and establish better habits. Now the main thing is this position, this posture, it didn't happen overnight. It will have accumulated over a length of time. We get that adaptive shortening. Again, if you need a little reminder of that definition, I'll pop that down there. So diving into lengthening the tight muscles. So the primary ones that we're going to focus on first are going to be those ones that are pulling the shoulder down and in. So that's pec minor and subscapularis. So all you need is a doorway for this. You're looking to do subscapularis stretch, which I will show you here. With that one, the main focus is trying to externally rotate the arm, so rotate the arm away as we're rotating the chest through. We're looking to remember the motion that subscapularis does is internally rotates the arm, so we're trying to go back the other way to lengthen it as much as possible. Pec minor, similar sort of thing. You just need to shuffle in a little closer to the doorway on this one. We want to make sure we keep the shoulder nice and close to the door frame. From there, it's reaching up overhead, making sure we keep that shoulder nice and back. If you think where the pec minor runs from, it runs from the ribs here up into the shoulder. If we then elevate the arm, we take that attachment point up here a lot higher, we then get that nice long stretch through here as well. Okay, so already we should be starting to feel less pressure pulling that shoulder down and in. Also, we then jump round into some of those muscles that are running up the top of the back into the back of the neck as well. A couple of really good ones for that are some sort of neck side flexion where you're looking to keep the chin tucked down and back and then take the head off to the side. It's good as well if you couple it with that opening up of the palm. This should be quite a comfortable stretch. We're not looking to be too aggressive with this at any point. It should be about finding a point of tension and trying to relax into it. Couple that as well with then we've also got levator scap running up the back of the neck, so some degree of mobilization for that where we're getting the shoulder blade, the scapula elevated, and then from there bringing the neck round as well, because that muscle again it wants to pull the shoulder blade down and in, which contributes to that collapsing forwards motion. Perfect, so now you've started to lengthen some of those muscles. You may already have felt a degree of relief if you were in pain. Talking about then strengthening some of those muscles that aren't doing as much work as they should be, or maybe up to a slight weakness compared to some of the tighter muscles. So the first place to start is some form of banded pull apart. Personally, I like one here where you start a little higher and pull down and in, because it allows you to really follow the fibers of the rhomboids, which run from that bottom edge of the shoulder blade up in towards the spine. So we want to be thinking about drawing the shoulder blades in together. Banded pull apart is perfect for that because it allows us to get that full squeeze through. With any of these movements, we want to be focusing on the quality of movement more than the quantity. The quantity will come. It's almost treating it as each individual rep. The more you practice it, the more you practice perfectly, the more perfect the movement is by the end of it. If you're just going through the motions here and you let whatever muscle fancy is taken over, you may actually end up compounding some of the issues you're already in. You can also vary the angle of the pull apart and the slight position you start from to focus on different areas. So we spoke about serratus anterior as well. That's one of the ones that runs through the shoulder blade, or runs by the shoulder blade, sorry. A slightly different motion with this one. You'd want to be in what we call a slight protraction. So we're staying tall, keeping the sternum high, but allowing the shoulders to come forwards ever so slightly, and then from there going up into elevation overhead. What that'll do is that'll get that serratus anterior to work correctly, letting the shoulder blade glide as we're in that position, that slight protraction. I've got other options as well, something like a plank plus too. Couple that with something like the swan hold, where you're then getting the lower and mid traps fire, and you're getting external rotation at the shoulder as well, all through thoracic extension, just with the weight of your own body to moderate load. It's again focusing on the quality of movement. I'd rather you broke it up into small bursts, holding it in the right position for a short period of time, resting and going back to it, rather than just powering through but letting some of the other muscles kick in as well. Good. You can also, if you're in the gym and instead of doing this at home, something like a face pull with a hold is probably one of my favorites for this. So if you're not already doing face pulls, you probably should be doing some degree of them. You can do them with a band at home as well. You want to be looking again to get that external rotation of the arms, but then you can add that little extra challenge by then going up into elevation, bringing it up overhead again as well. Perfect. Last one is then looking at those deep cervical flexors. So we want to think about these as getting the chin down and then back as well. So it's pulling back away from the front of the body. So a really easy way of doing this is just to stand against the wall, pop a little pad behind your head, and consciously think about tucking the chin down and back to pin the pad against the wall. Again, you're just looking to slight hold. It shouldn't be too much pressure. You shouldn't need to bring the feet really far forwards or anything like that. It should be quite a fairly comfortable position. It should be challenging certainly, but it shouldn't be placing a huge amount of stress or feeling particularly aggressive in terms of that position on the neck itself. Good. Last port of call is then that third one, the habits themselves. So we want to make sure that we didn't get into this position overnight. This is something that's built up over an extended period of time. So how can we then start to address some of those habits we have throughout the day? Really good one to do with this is if you sit at a desk, which is quite common for individuals that are in this rounded shoulder position, is then to find some way of creating a feedback loop. Now what that might be will change for everything. Some things that I've found work with clients is if they've got a high back chair, popping a tennis ball just between the top edge of the shoulder blades, because if you then start to collapse forwards into that rounded shoulder position, the tennis ball then rolls down your back. You've got that feedback loop that you've lost your position. Just reset it, go again. That one does get you some funny looks from your office workers as well though, so you may feel less comfortable doing that. Another option is to set a recurring timer, a little reminder that goes off every half an hour on your phone that reminds you to bring sternum back level, set the shoulder blades down and in. Yeah, something like that just gives you that little nudge repetitively to make sure that you're keeping yourself in the correct position. The more you enforce those good habits, the easier it is to then reinforce that position being a better position. Good, so just a quick little recap. What it is we've got the tightness of the muscles through the front of the chest, weakness of the front of the neck, tightness around the top of the back into the back of the neck, and then a weakness in that mid-back as well, causing that collapse of the shoulders, the head to rise up to make sure we're still looking nice and flat. Why do we even care about that? It increases the risk of impingement in the shoulders. Also in terms of the position, we do get uneven pressure through some of the joints, particularly thoracic spine as well, just increases the risk of injury. So best way to identify is your standing thumb position. Check yourself in the mirror or check the position of that sternum as well. Remember the glass of water going from there. Ports of call to address it, to get ourselves in a better position. We want to lengthen those tight muscles, so you've got a few stretches there as well. Start with those. Then we're going to be strengthening some of the weaker muscles as well, particularly those ones through the mid-back. Then lastly, try and improve those daily habits as well. If you found this helpful, drop a comment down below, hit the like button, let me know. I'll see you in the next one.